Welcome back to the Deep Dive, and welcome to this special focus, Congress in Context. If you've been keeping an eye on things, you know Washington is full of, well, intense clashes right now.
Absolutely. But these aren't just political games. They're leading to some really high-stakes situations that, impact your wallet, your community, even your personal data.
That's exactly what we want to unpack today.
Right. Our mission here is to really dig into what's been happening lately. We're looking at three main areas, sort of flashpoints. There's this surprisingly personal fight over D.C.'s local control. Then there's the huge issue, the looming healthcare and, frankly, fiscal crisis. And finally, we'll look at where the big ideological battles are playing out on energy and labor policy. It gives you a real snapshot.
Okay, let's dive in then. First up, this question of who controls the laws in Washington, D.C. itself. It sounds like it got pretty heated.
Yeah, it really did. The main focus was H.R. 4922, called the D.C. Crimes Act of 2025. It passed, but narrowly 225 to 203.
So what's the push behind that bill?
Accountability, mainly pushed by Republicans, focused on crime stats. They're pointing to D.C. having the fourth highest homicide rate nationally in 2023.
Okay.
And their argument is, look, the local government isn't handling it, so Congress has to step in. The bill specifically goes after D.C.'s Youth Rehabilitation Act.
How so?
It wants to change who counts as a youth offender. Right now, is anyone under 25? This bill drops that age down to 18.
Big difference.
Huge. The thinking is, adult criminals should be treated as adults. And crucially, it also tries to permanently stop the D.C. Council from lowering sentences in the future.
Wow, okay, and wasn't there another related bill trying to go even further?
Yes, exactly. H.R. 5140, that one aims to lower the age for trying a minor as an adult for really serious crimes, murder, armed robbery, that kind of thing.
From what age to what age?
From 16 down to 14. So yeah, a really fundamental shift in juvenile justice for the Capitol.
So how did D.C. officials react to all this?
Not well. Unified opposition, basically.
Yeah.
The mayor, the council, they called it an unprecedented attack on the autonomy and home rule of the city's residents.
Yeah.
Nearly 700,000 people.
They see it as Congress overriding local democracy.
Precisely. And they also argued that their own recent changes to local laws, especially around pretrial detention, were actually starting to work, starting to bring down violent crime. So they're saying this federal intervention isn't even needed.
And the debate itself, you mentioned it got personal.
Oh, definitely. It went way beyond just policy points.
Right.
We saw one representative directly attacking the bill's sponsor.
How?
By arguing the sponsor was snatching grace away from young people in D.C. while pointing out that the sponsor himself had felony bribery charges expunged when he was under 24. That's pretty direct.
Yeah, that is specific.
And another comparison thrown out there was linking this move to the, quote, hyper-punitive culture that wrongly prosecuted the exonerated five back in the 80s. So you see this clash, Congress asserting oversight versus D.C. fighting for autonomy, all fueled by conflicting takes on crime data.
Okay, so shifting gears from that very specific D.C. fight to something much broader, something affecting everyone. The financial picture, the physical cliff, the national debt. This is where it gets really high stakes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the most immediate sort of human impact is the expiration of the expanded Affordable Care Act subsidies, the premium tax credits.
Right. What happens if those go away?
Well, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, they estimate at least 1.5 million people will become uninsured. Some representatives are saying it could be closer to 4 million.
1.5 to 4 million people losing health insurance? That's huge. What does it mean for families financially? Can you give us some specifics?
Yeah, let's try to paint a picture with the numbers from the source material. Okay, take a family of four, maybe parents in their mid-40s, making around $130,000 a year.
Okay.
Their annual premiums could jump by over $17,700.
$17,000.
Yes, that's a 172% increase. I mean, imagine trying to absorb that kind of hit to your budget.
That's just devastating for a family budget.
But it's not just higher earners. Even a family making, say, $64,000 could see their premiums go up by almost 370%. For many, that's the difference between having coverage and not.
Wow. And all this is happening against that backdrop of the, frankly, terrifying national debt figures we keep hearing about.
Right. The U.S. borrowing something like $70,000, $72,000 every single second. I mean, that's just not sustainable long term.
And the big entitlement programs.
The clock is ticking there, too. Medicare's trust fund, projected to be empty by 2032. That's only 7 years away. Social Security, empty the year after, 2033.
So that's driving calls for cuts, big cuts.
Massive calls. And the most aggressive plan floated that we saw mentioned was something called the 6-penny plan.
6-penny plan, what does that mean?
It's pretty drastic. It calls for a 6% cut across the board. Everything. The goal being to balance the budget in 5 years.
6% from everything. Defense, education, parks.
Everything non-entitlement related, yes. It's a huge number compared to past proposals, like the one-penny plan discussed back in 2017.
Yeah.
It just shows how big a hole they feel they need to climb out of.
And while they're talking cuts, they're also fighting about revenue, specifically tariffs.
Right. Cuts both ways. Supporters point to the money coming in, over $29 billion collected from tariffs this year, they say, securing trade wins.
But the opponents?
They call tariffs a hidden tax on you, the American consumer. They point to efforts being blocked to even vote on ending some tariffs they see as unjustified.
Like the example about Brazil.
Exactly. A 50% tariff on goods from Brazil apparently put in place to protect a convicted former president. And the result? Higher prices for things like coffee.
Okay, and connected to all this government spending and oversight, there was something about data privacy, DOGE.
Yes, the Department of Government Efficiency. This caught our eye. A resolution of inquiry was introduced over concerns that DOGE employees got access to individual Social Security records.
Okay, that sounds sensitive.
Extremely. And then, apparently, they stored this data in a cloud system that might be vulnerable. Now, DOGE is supposed to be about streamlining government.
Right, efficiency.
But the fear here, the master file concern, is that if you gather all this private data, like Social Security numbers, in one place without tight security, you could accidentally create a giant searchable digital ID tracking system on everyone.
Which led to some strong language.
Very strong. One member called it a step towards a police state. It's that potential clash between efficiency and massive privacy risk that's causing the alarm.
All right, let's shift again. From finance and data to clear ideological divides on domestic policy, energy, and labor seem to be key battlegrounds.
Definitely. On energy, there were several bills focused on grid reliability.
Like the GRID Power Act.
Yes, H.R. 10047, the GRID Power Act. Supporters frame it as common sense cutting red tape to prioritize reliable power sources. They specifically mention coal, natural gas, nuclear, hydro.
And they contrast that with
what they call unreliable intermittent sources, meaning wind and solar. Their argument is all about keeping the lights on, ensuring grid stability above all else.
And there's a real-world context driving this debate, too.
Yeah, it's not abstract. Opponents of policies pushing renewables point to examples like New York State. New York is moving ahead with a ban on natural gas and propane hookups in new buildings starting in 2026.
So people argue that forces reliance on potentially less reliable energy, especially in colder climates?
That's the argument, yeah. Making families in places like Western New York depend on electric heat during harsh winters. It makes the reliability debate very tangible for people.
Okay, so that's the push on the energy side. But then you look at the Department of Labor, and it seems like a different trend, rolling back regulations.
It does seem like a contrast, doesn't it? We saw fierce debate about recent DOL actions, potentially weakening protections for vulnerable workers. There's a common thread.
Which is?
Deregulation, basically.
Yeah.
Shifting power back towards employers, sometimes by lowering baseline standards for workers. We saw 3 really clear examples.
Okay, what were they?
First, home health aides. This is a workforce that's mostly women, many women of color. The administration proposed rolling back a rule that guaranteed them federal minimum wage.
Wow, okay. Second?
Disabled workers. The DOL kept issuing certificates, allowing employers to pay less than minimum wage, sub-minimum wage. This reverses a push by the previous administration to phase that practice out. It affects almost 40,000 people.
And the third area was farm workers.
Yes. Proposals to get rid of certain safety rules, things like seatbelts in transport vans, also weakening organizing rights. And maybe most significantly, getting rid of the Farm Labor Survey.
Why is that survey important?
It's the main source of data used to set fair wage levels for farm workers across the country. So you take these 3 together, home health aides, disabled workers, farm workers. It looks like a significant pullback on federal protections for some very vulnerable groups.
It sounds like mostly division and fighting. Were there any moments where Congress actually came together?
Yes, and it's important to highlight those. It wasn't all gridlock. There was the Gardner Sewell Act.
What does that do?
It's focused on expanding access to early cancer detection screenings. And it got huge bipartisan support, 295 co-sponsors in the House, 62 in the Senate. That shows they can unite when it's about something like constituent health.
Any other examples?
Well, there was a unanimous vote, 413-0,
Oh.
on a procedural motion, which is rare these days. And on a much more somber note, the Senate came together unanimously on Resolution 391.
What was that about?
It condemned the assassination of the conservative commentator Charlie Kirk back on September 10, 2025. It was a moment that transcended politics, a unified stance against political violence.
Important moments to remember. Okay, let's broaden the lens again. Look at the global stage. Congress deals with international issues constantly.
Always. We saw notifications about several proposed foreign arms sales to key allies. Things like Apache helicopters for Australia, Black Hawks for Austria, Sidewinder missiles for Belgium, F-16 parts for Norway.
What's the significance of those?
It signals continued commitment to alliances, like NATO, ensuring forces can work together effectively. Standard but important foreign policy maintenance.
And then back to domestic issues, but with national implications, public health, and Puerto Rico.
Yeah, two key things that show ongoing fractures. First, the vaccine debate is clearly still very divisive.
How so?
A resolution, SRES 389, was brought forward. It directly condemned the HHS secretary for, quote, anti-vaccine conspiracy theories, and also criticized Florida for rolling back school immunization requirements.
And what happened to it?
It was blocked, just stopped by an objection in the Senate. The argument against it focused heavily on states' rights, the 10th Amendment, saying public health mandates are purely a state issue. The fact they couldn't even debate it shows how sensitive this remains.
In Puerto Rico, what was the reminder there?
It was about Hurricane Maria, specifically honoring the anniversary. The speech given alongside a resolution was apparently very powerful.
What way?
It talked about the feeling of abandonment and silence after the storm hit years ago. It made the point that the thousands of lives lost weren't just from the wind, but from the neglect that followed. It was a call for justice, for resilient infrastructure, and basically an end to the fight for fairness for the island, a piece of unfinished business.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. D.C. autonomy, the massive healthcare cliff, debt debates, DOGE, privacy fears, energy fights, labor rollbacks, moments of unity, global sales, and these lingering issues like vaccines in Puerto Rico. What does this all boil down to for you, our listener?
I think the key takeaway, maybe the central insight here, is that doing nothing legislative in action now has a really clear immediate price tag. We've talked about bills deciding who's a kid offender or who gets minimum wage.
Right.
But we also saw the cost of gridlock, that potential $17,000 premium increase for families if the ACA credits expire. That's not theoretical. That's a direct consequence of inaction.
So if you want to engage, you need to be specific.
Exactly. You can track those energy bills we mentioned, HR 1047, 30015, 362. They're in the pipeline. You can go to congress.gov and actually read the D.C. bills, HR 4922 and 140, see the exact language being debated.
And knowing those specifics helps when you contact your representative, especially on something like the D.C. issue where it's about Congress's oversight role.
Absolutely. And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with. That whole debate around the ACA subsidies really highlights how the big abstract fight over physical sanity directly connects to the very real possibility of medical bankruptcy for millions of families.
That $17,000 figure isn't just a number in a report.
Not at all. It's the potential reality shaping up because of decisions or non-decisions being made right now. And it really sets the stage for what's going to be a critical, high-stakes budget fight as the year winds down.
Lots to keep an eye on. Until next time, stay well informed.